to A Spot of Story with Danielle Grandinetti. Cozy up with your favorite beverage as we chat about sweet romance, thrilling suspense, and fascinating history. Perhaps you'll find your next read in one of these stories. On this episode of A Spot of Story, Echoes of History, we're stepping back not into the 1930s, but all the way back into the 1880s and 1890s to explore girl stunt reporters. I'm excited to share this topic with you because it's fascinating to me. While I was researching Investigation of a Journalist, the main character, Carrie, was a journalist. And as I was researching female journalists, I came across the term stunt reporter. At the time, a stunt reporter were investigative reporters who went undercover, basically. So an example would be Nellie Bly, and I'll get into the examples in a minute. But as I was researching, I got more and more fascinated. But the thing is, by the time the 1930s rolled around, female journalists were much more common. Not common like they are today, but they were definitely making inroads thanks to changes that had happened since the late 1800s. They lost a lot of the ground they made up because of the Depression and the economic struggles. Women were some of the first to be removed from positions to quote, make room for men to keep their jobs. We'll talk about that a different day. But right now, about the Girl Stunt Reporters. So by the 1930s, there wasn't this same sensationalism, I suppose you could say, about the Girl Stunt Reporters as there was during the Gilded Age. So it was one of those, I logged it in the back of my mind. And as I began researching and developing my new series, the Stasio Giornaliste Agency series, which is a 1930s historical romantic mystery series, I realized this was the perfect opportunity to dive into the history of how this agency came about. And that is because of a stunt reporter. So the tagline for my Stasio series is the legacy of a girl stunt reporter. Today, I want to talk about the history behind girl stunt reporters. As I mentioned, Nellie Bly is probably the most famous of the girl stunt reporters from the late 1800s. Her given name it was Elizabeth Cochran Seaman, and she famously went undercover as a mentally ill person into one of the New York asylums and nearly didn't get out. But because she was working with Joseph Pulitzer and his newspaper there in New York, they were able to rescue her. And she, in turn, wrote her articles about how asylums treated women in the day. And because of that, a lot of reform began to happen. She's not the only one who went undercover in such a way. There were other reporters like Winifred McCulley or Eleanor Stackhouse Atkinson, who wrote under the name Nora Marks. Both were Chicago reporters who worked to help women and immigrants and other marginalized people within Chicago. Other journalists would go undercover as pregnant women to see how women were treated. And then, based on their experiences, they wrote their article and helped the public become more aware of these issues. One of the books that I appreciated as I was researching a lot of how these reporters worked was a book by Kim Todd. It was called Sensational: The Hidden History of America's Girl Stunt Reporters. And it was just fascinating to dive into how they worked, how men such as Pulitzer helped them become these stalwarts, history changers, really, groundbreakers in journalism and society changers by helping actually change labor, treatment of women, business practices. They truly went for all sorts of details like this. One of the girl stunt reporters who probably influenced Ali's character the most was another Chicago writer, Helen Cusack, who published as Nel Nelson. She went undercover in sweatshops and cigar factories and exposed the working conditions of women in the late 1800s. As I was creating Ali's character based on these women, the fact that she wanted to expose how women were treated during that age. For Ali, she went undercover to expose how orphans and immigrants were treated during the Gilded Age. And I think what's really important too is the context of the Gilded Age. The whole point of it being called the Gilded Age is because the era looked on the surface like this perfect time of history, almost like it was gold plated. And the Chicago World's Fair happened during that same time period and was called the White City. So the fact that these women went undercover to show that all was not gold plated, all was not white and pristine and beautiful looking. Underneath the surface, there was a lot of not just bad things happening, but evil things happening. And so they risked their lives, they risked their health, they risked their reputations to go undercover to show the world the truth about what was actually happening to women of the day. Writing a story that is romantic mystery allows me to be able to have that little bit of edginess, grit, for lack of a better term, that these stunt reporters would have had to have in order to risk as much as they did. And yes, you could call it sensationalized because that type of reporting was common then, perhaps even now too. We talk about rage bait or clickbait. Newspapers still are aiming to sell just like they were then. But these reporters, these women, used that to their advantage to be able to show what changes had to be made in order to improve society. So I'm excited again to give a little sneak peek into the life of a female stunt reporter in Undercover Wish. If you would like to learn more about girl stunt reporters, I linked to an article or two, as well as to Kim Todd's book on Amazon. Thank you for tuning in for this episode Into the Past. As I mentioned, you can find additional resources and the show notes on the episode page on my website.
Thank you for listening to A Spot of Story with Danielle Grandinetti. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Let us know by leaving a comment below, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Discover more information about today's book by visiting A Spot of Story online at daniellegrandinetti.com/podcast. Happy reading!